Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to an episode of In the Frame. And today in the frame is Indicator's Columbia Noir number 6 box set, and it's the Whistler films. Comes in a wonderful green box, and there's 8 films in this. So we have The Whistler, The Mark of the Whistler, The Power of the Whistler, Voice of the Whistler, Mysterious Intruder, still a Whistler film, Secret of the Whistler, The 13th Hour, still a Whistler film, and The Return of the Whistler. These films are from 1944 to 1948, and it's a kind of similar story to the Inner Sanctum Mysteries. It's a radio show which then was made into films, and this one had Lon Chaney Jr. as the star of all 6 films, playing different characters. And in the case of The Whistler, it's Richard Dix, who's one of the biggest dicks in Hollywood, the silent era in the early talkies in the 30s. But by the 40s he was a bit older. He's in all of the films apart from the last one, because by that time he'd actually died at the age of 54. He was one of kind of the classic Hollywood hard drinkers. So each of the films comes, each pair of films comes on one disc. So we've got The Whistler and Mark of the Whistler on disc 1, which is spine number 354. Then we have The Power of the Whistler and The Voice of the Whistler, that's in spine number 355. We have Mysterious Intruder, and then Secret of the Whistler, that's spine number 356. And finally, spine number 357 is The 13th Hour and The Return of the Whistler, the film without Richard Dix. So these films are all between 60 and 65 minutes. 67 minutes is the longest one. So they're very watchable, and I was actually surprised at how good they are and how enjoyable they are. So they are essentially like Edgar Wallace mysteries or Tales of the Unexpected, without any supernatural goings on. They're generally noirs about characters making wrong moral choices or being tripped up by fate. It also comes with this massive booklet. There's Dix himself, and there's one of the many female characters. But this is a 120 page booklet with wonderful images, features about Dix, interviews with Dix. There's even a piece on when Dix died, and there was one less Dix in Hollywood. But it's a wonderful set, as you'd expect. From Indicator, there's commentaries. There's a great piece by Kim Newman on the series, and there's also a piece by Kim Newman about William Castle, because that's another interesting thing about these films. I think about 4 of them were directed by William Castle, who obviously is more known for his horror films and his gimmick films. but he actually directed 4 of these films, including the first 2. But the sort of interesting thing about The Whistler is, which actually surprised me, apart from that they're actually really good, the fact that Richard Dix isn't the Whistler. Richard Dix, very much like Lon Chaney Jr. In the Inner Sanctum Mysteries, he just plays different characters. The Whistler is this overarching character who, strangely enough, has a whistling theme tune, and he is the narrator of these stories. But during the stories, he also doesn't necessarily speak to the lead characters, but he appears on the wall as a shadow and kind of says, "Oh, you're out your depth here, Harry," or "You didn't think that was going to happen, Frank." So it's this kind of dark, overseeing character who is telling us the story, and as we watch the events unfold, the Whistler knows everything, and his kind of tagline is, "Take it from me because I know, because I'm the Whistler," and then he just wanders off camera as the end comes up at the end of every story. So it's a neat little twist, because he's not necessarily empathetic. He is just like, "I'm the Whistler, I'm going to tell you a story. Look at this poor guy or woman. I'm going to show you how they went through hell, but somehow sometimes learned a lesson, sometimes didn't. And then I'm going to gloat about it, the fact that I know about it, and then I'm going to wander off and tell you another one." So, as I said, I was really surprised at how much fun these are. And again, because they're so short, you can just binge 3 or 4 of them at a time. So again, you could argue at times it's hard to remember which one's which. But you have kind of classic stories of, for example, there's a drifter, played by Dix himself, obviously. Yeah, that's one thing. For some reason, lots of women fall for Richard Dix at this point, even though he was a middle-aged guy with health problems. But maybe that was just part of the contract. So one of them is a drifter who tries to pose as somebody else because a bank has created a list of dormant accounts. So he does his research and pretends to be somebody so they can get the money out of this dormant account, but then we realise there's a reason why the person hasn't claimed it, because they are wanting to lay low for something else. And then of course everybody thinks Dix is this character, including the people that are after him. The stuff about a dying millionaire who somehow convinces this young blonde nurse to marry him, and then obviously he doesn't have long to live, so she will have the lifestyle she always wanted and can help her current boyfriend out. But then of course Dix isn't actually dying, and that leads to some wonderful scenes in an old lighthouse. There's one with Dix as a truck driver, an owner of a truck company who won't bend to the mob, so he's framed for a couple of murders. It's just lots of those kind of scenarios, which again we've seen lots of times, but this is wonderfully economic, and certainly the ones that Castle directs look really good. Use of shadow and light, obviously the Whistler will appear behind the character, his shadow on the wall, while he gloats and goes, it's going to get worse for this guy, but he doesn't know what I do because I'm the Whistler. I'm sure there's another name for him. And then the one that doesn't have Richard Dix, which is probably one of the weaker ones, but by week I still say it's enjoyable and really watchable, about a couple who want to get married, but the justice of the peace is closed, so they have to go to a hotel, but of course because they're not married they can't possibly share the same room. But then when the guy wakes up in the morning to go get his betrothed, she's went missing. So it's that classic setup as well. So all these setups are things that we've seen since, and possibly before as well, but they're just done in a very, as I said, energetic, very economic way, because it's 60 to 67 minutes, the films don't hang about, and they're just really, really enjoyable. There's one about Dix plays a fairly dodgy private eye who is hired by an old man to find this young woman who happens to be blonde. Most of the women in these films are blonde, strangely enough. And it's also about 2 phonograph rolls that are really valuable because it's an old Swedish singer and they're worth 100 grand each. And therefore all the hijinks that happen when various people want to get their hands on that money, they're just all rather fantastic. I would say the first 6 are really good and the last 2 are kind of still solid. There's also one about Dix is a businessman who hires a hitman to kill himself. No, he doesn't hire a hitman to kill himself, as in the hitman to commit suicide. Dix hires the hitman to kill Dix, just to clear that up. But then, of course, he changes his mind due to events happening and his future becoming a little bit brighter. But again, by that time, things are in motion. They're just wonderful, wonderful little films. Again, am I going to watch them again next month? Possibly not. Are they the greatest films ever made? No. But there is just an energy to them, and as I said, because they're so short, the longest is 67 minutes, you can just bash through them in a weekend and you'll have a fun time. They're all Region B. It's a Region B box set. They're all high definition presentations, apart from the Mark of the Whistler, which is just a standard definition, but again the picture, you wouldn't really notice that much difference. There's commentaries by Josh Nelson, Jason Ney, Lee Gambin, who's probably the most famous name amongst them, Jeremy Arnold, Elias Ross, again Newman does a couple of pieces. There's an interview with Robert Dix, who's an actor himself, about his father Richard Dix from 2010, which is 19 minutes. There is a Stuart Holmes oral history from 1958, which is 69 minutes, which is an audio recording of prolific character actor in conversation with historian George Pratt. There's a couple of kind of war propaganda films. The first, it's Murder from 1944, which is 9 minutes, which features a load of the actors from the Whistler series. Again, you'll recognise quite a lot of faces. Again, if you've watched enough noirs from the 40s and 50s, you'll recognise so many faces. And this one's fantastic because it's about, it starts pretty much with a corpse telling us that he's dead, strangely enough, washed up on the beach in what looks like a bag, in a sack, and he tells us in flashback how he was killed, because it's a murder, because all these people give out bits of information so the Japanese knew what Pacific Island his brigade, his unit, was going to land on, just by little bits of information that people sent in his own hometown. So it's basically a warning to keep your mouth shut, or the Japanese will kill your sons who are in the army. And then It's Your America from 1945, which is 36 minutes, directed by John Ford, and that's a dramatised documentary about soldiers coming back from World War II. And then there's lots of galleries and photo galleries on it. Limited to 6,000. I've got number 52. If you like film noir, it's highly recommended. And if you don't, you're probably not going to be interested. So on that bombshell, I'll finish the video. I would say it's a perfect sale item, probably for next year's, unless Indicator do one later in the year, or sometimes they do flash sales. Granted, this probably won't be a sale item until next year, but it's well worth picking up. Probably I would wait in the sale to get it. I mean, there's 6,000 sets made, so I doubt very much it's going to sell out. But I would certainly wait for a sale to pick it up. It is out today, officially, I believe, but obviously I'd just get mine earlier, because Indicator are wonderful and send out pre-orders a good bit earlier than the official date. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen any of The Whistler, and if indeed The Whistler knows everything. And hopefully you'll join me again for more episodes of In the Frame. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.